Alright, so here's the dizzle. Uh, David's not doing this vlog this week. We thought he was going to be because we got a rotation going. But for those of you who are not friends with David, I should let you know that he's not doing this vlog this week. He asked me to. Reason being is because his wife just had a baby. So congratulations, David and Kelly. It's awesome. If you are friends with them, you can go and look at baby pictures and they're amazing. If you're not friends with them, don't worry, because next week when David vlogs, he has told me that his child will be in it. So that's exciting. Anyway, you may be looking outside right now and thinking, oh, that's weird. It looks like nighttime outside. And that is because you're right. It is nighttime. It is exactly 11:44 in the PMs. Reason being, I slept till 2 today. I got home last night and looked at my work schedule that I had written down, thinking that I actually was going to work a double today. And I re-looked at it and realized that I don't work at all today. So I was pretty excited. Downside of that is I literally had no reason to get out of bed. So I think I went to bed at around 1 o'clock last night, and I was in my bed till 2. I won't say I was sleeping till 2, because I was probably just laying there awake for a good hour or so. But anyway, what that means is that this is pretty much right in the middle of my afternoon right now, so I won't be going to bed for a while. So I thought this is as good a time as any to do a vlog. I had really no idea what I was going to talk about, but since we're still in the writing process for this Misfit album that we're going to be recording in August, I thought that maybe I'd talk a little bit about the writing process. The reason why this one is different is because our first album was 10 tracks long. Our second album was 12 tracks long. This album, our third, is going to be about 30 tracks long. It would be one thing if it was just a 30-track album, but you also have to realize it's a concept album, which pretty much just means that it's an album that tells a story. It's not just a series of songs that we've written conglutionated into one homogeneous album. This album tells a story, and so because it tells a story, the music kind of has to play like the soundtrack to a movie. And the way a soundtrack to a movie should play is if you're listening to it on its own with no video in front of you, you should be able to have kind of a rough grasp of what the story is, even if you're not watching anything. So not only do we have to write 30 songs that are all kind of musically linked together without a bunch of breaks in between every song like you'd hear on a normal album, they have to all tell a different part of one cohesive story. It's very hard not to make each song just kind of like a little throwaway song. You can't really waste time on a concept album. Each song has to have a purpose for being there. Each song you have to be able to point out and say, okay, the album wouldn't work if this song weren't in here. Each song has to say something. But then at the same time, we're trying not to write an opera. We're trying not to make it a very cheesy, like laying out the story for you. Here's the story, and like all the characters have different voices or whatever. We want it to be a really honest and personal journey, because that's really what it's about. And so the idea is to tell that story in a subtle way through 30 or so tracks without getting boring. When you put all of that together, all of a sudden the writing process becomes about 100 times harder, because you're not just writing songs that sound good standing alone. You're writing songs that work well with each other, and in some cases should sound good as well as standalone songs. So we actually have an outline. If you want to see the outline, I will give away some extremely dangerous secrets about this album. So you ready? We're going to look at the outline. You ready? Here's the outline for our album. Whoa, whoa. You can freeze frame that and see if you can read my handwriting. And so we've been using this outline. We went through track by track and said, okay, what needs to happen in track 1? What needs to happen in track 2? Etc., on down to track 14, end of disc 1, disc 2. Where does the story pick up? And then track 14 on disc 2, how does the story end? I'm just guessing at those track numbers, I don't know. And so we have this outline to help us say, okay, how do we plot the songs out? How do we make it sound like one cohesive story with dynamic and changes and keeping you interested? Right now we have disc 1 almost completely written with the exception of 2 songs, and those 2 songs we have ideas for musically, and we just need to write some lyrics to them. We're kind of tightening up some screws and dot some lowercase j's. For disc 2 we have like the first 3 or 4 tracks. We have the last 3 or 4 tracks, but we're missing the brunt of that second disc. And why we are is because I mentioned earlier, part of the idea is to keep the whole album interesting. And the troubling thing with a 2-disc album is after someone has decided to have the patience to sit down and listen to the whole first disc, they've pretty much just listened to an entire album. So now it's on us to say, okay, what can we do to make the second disc even better while still being true to the story? Because obviously the first disc is going to be interesting. It's like you have the beginning of the story, and then it kind of ends when things are starting to get interesting. So there's constant build-up, and there's constant dynamic and light and shade, and starting out happy and then getting darker and darker and darker, and you're thinking, oh, what's going to happen? And then obviously the end of disc 2 is interesting because that's the climax and the whole story wrapping up, and everybody hopefully will be really interested to see what happens there. But that first part slash the middle of disc 2 is the trickiest thing. How do you come out of disc 1 and immediately right off the bat give them something interesting while still holding back enough so that the end of that disc can be even better than anything else you've heard so far? So that's kind of what we're working on now. I think we have a few really good ideas. Obviously we'll keep you updated in future vlogs, but we just have probably a solid, I don't know, 8 to 10 tracks to finish up, and then the album will be completely written. We'll be ready to go down to Alabama and rehearse. I think that's really all I wanted to talk about, the writing process and what it's like writing a concept album. It's something we've never done before, and it's something that some bands, a lot of bands actually never do. So it's been an interesting learning process. On a completely unrelated side note, for those of you who live in Iowa in the Cedar Rapids, Marion, Toddville, Robbins area, this Friday, June 7th, live broadcast, playing a show. Robbins Roundup will be there from about probably 6:30 to 10. We're playing, I think, 38 songs, so it'll be awesome. You should come invite all your friends. It's going to be full band, me, Riley, our friend Luke on drums, and our friend Josh Johnson on the trumpet. So it'll be thebomb.com, you might say, thebomb.com. So feel free to come check that out. There will be Under the Magnifying Glass albums for sale. On an even more unrelated side note, we are currently getting Above the Sky, our second album, remastered for you, so that will be on sale again soon here. And yeah, that seems like about it. So I will go to bed in about 5 hours, and I'll see y'all next week, or rather, David will, and his child. So that'll be cool. All right, see ya.